Welcome, everybody. We're going to get started. If you want more food, it's out there. More people are probably going to trickle in because we have about 60 registered for today's event. I'd like to thank everyone for coming out on this pretty cold February. I'm trying to get into the year. I have managed to start writing 2016, so I guess I've made some progress. Today's topic is connecting passion and purpose in life and law. And normally I would introduce the speakers, but today we're doing a little bit different format. So I'm just going to tell you briefly about the Health and Wellbeing Committee and about these lectures and where you can find the rest of the lecture series that we've previously done. And we have them on YouTube. So except for our first lecture, all of our lectures are on the YouTube channel. And Demity's creating a playlist for those. The topics range from diet and nutrition to sleep to exercise. This is our first lecture, which is a different format, for 2016. Our next lecture will be on June 2nd, and this gentleman, Jim Bogen, and personal trainer Dave Dickey will be back revising their role on fitness. We try to do that every May, June of each year. And then we'll have 2 lectures in the fall, which we're looking for topics. So if you would take time and fill out your evaluation and send us ideas, you can reach our committee through the webpage of the CBA. We have a separate webpage. You can also reach out to me or Dimity if you have ideas, thoughts, questions, comments. The committee was started 4 bar years ago by myself in reaction to the death of a colleague that I had from suicide. And it's a really great group of lawyers. We get together the first Wednesday of every month. We plan this lecture series. We do a CLE every year. Every month we have a column in the Bar Association called Balanced Living. And our goal is to help people live a happier, fuller life and to decrease the incidence of substance abuse and depression, anxiety, and mental illness in our profession. So part of that is self-care, and part of that is making peace with how you practice law. And that's where today's topic comes in. In addition to the committee, we also have a fund at the Cincinnati Bar Foundation, which is the Ken Jamison Health and Wellbeing Fund. I would ask that people remember that as they make donations every year. We are trying to get to a matching amount so that we can keep the fund restricted just for the Health and Wellbeing Committee. Right now, the funding for this lecture series comes from the foundation, a general grant, which we have been renewed for this year. And it would be nice to have a separate fund that we can draw from and expand our programming. And without any more of my chatter, I would like to turn it over to Jim Bogen, who's going to be our moderator for today's presentation. Thank you.
Actually, thank you, everybody. Actually, this afternoon, first of all, let's start if each speaker could just introduce themselves, please. Each panel member.
Joe Dehner, Frost Brown Todd.
Kent Wellington at Graydon Head.
Jennifer Leonard at Gatherwright Freeman.
Thank you. Well, okay, we had, obviously this is the first time we've done this as having a panel discussion, and we prepared a few questions for our panel members. And first of all, we'd like to start with each panel member, starting with Mr. Dehner. What is it that motivates you to positively affect the lives of others or the community outside of the practice of law?
The fear of hell. I mean, hell's the eternal boredom, so as long as you avoid that, you're going to be all right.
Mr. Wellington? Okay.
Boy, I'd like to say it's my faith, but to be honest, probably more of my upbringing and a sense of it's the right thing to do. I've certainly always kind of preached to my kids that the great paradox of life is the more we give, the richer our own lives are, and I think you certainly see that in this town. I work at Graydon Head. We've got a strong, long civic backbone in our firm. A lot of people are involved in a lot of philanthropic areas, and frankly, it was a little easier for me to get involved in the community and things outside of work because my mentors and peers at Graydon were doing that.
For me, it is, I felt like I needed something more. I was working, and I have 3-year-old twins, and who were very little, and at the time, and I felt like in order to be a better mother, a better wife, a better attorney, a better person, I could give back to my community and get involved. So that's kind of how I've gotten involved, and I feel the old saying, you get more in return than what you give. I've learned that firsthand.
Tell me this, are all three of you currently working full-time as lawyers right now?
Yes.
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 And just as a ballpark, are you able to estimate how many hours a week or how many days a week you're putting in?
Seems like 8.
Well, I keep track of it very carefully. My so-called non-billables are consistently higher than my so-called billables. Last year is about 2,650 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, I think we do that as well. At Graydon, we measure billable hours and non-billable hours, and it's like anything. If you don't measure it, you don't really know what you're doing. And I've been involved in 2 areas outside of work. One is basically vulnerable kids, mentoring, and Cincinnati Youth Collaborative, and I can tell you down to the hour how much time I spend on those. And the other cause I've been involved in is families living with breast cancer, and I spend a fair amount of time with those as well, and I really track that time also so I can make sure I'm using my time wisely. And it's also good to know at the end of the year what you're doing. I just got my annual Fifth Third credit card statement from my kids. Do you guys get those? It shows you how much you spend on food, restaurants, and retail. So I was circling all these things for my kids, and they were a little surprised when I showed them how much they were doing. I think the same thing goes for billable and non-billable work.
Now, I think a good question to ask before we go to the next main question. Can you describe a little bit of some of your community involvement? Could the three of you, starting with Mr. Dehner, describe some of the activities that you're doing in the community?
Yeah, and let me ask you how you want to do this, but I thought we were all going to talk about 8 minutes on kind of our journey. Do you want us to do
Yeah,
that?
just give a brief summary of what you do, and then I'm going to
Okay.
then we're going to go
Do that
into those.
later.
Yeah,
Well, good heavens, I'm on about 10.
just a brief listing of the activities that you're involved in, or
Okay, I'll be real
Sir.
brief. I'm on about 10 boards. I spend a couple hundred hours a year on making sure that the worst readers in the city are able to read by 4th grade. I'm the chancellor of the Diocese of Southern Ohio, and I've got an awful lot of friends.
there's some
Yeah,
more
so
things.
I'm in my 11th and final year as chair of the Cincinnati Youth Collaborative Board. That's the mentoring, tutoring, college access arm in town, which I really enjoy because it is truly collaborative. And, we were just talking about some ways to continue that collaboration with his reading program. We also have been mentors to a number of inner city kids. When I say we, this is really kind of a family ministry, if you will. My kids kind of grew up as mentors, and my mentees now are in their 20s and 30s, and one's graduated from law school. The others one's in college, the other 2 are working in Over the Rhine. And I was just telling Joe, it's time to reload again. We have a new Over the Rhine office, Graydon on Main, which is about 100 yards from Rothenburg School. So I think God is clearly telling me, get your butt into Rothenburg and make some connections with those kids. So that's the vulnerable kid side. My story is in 1997, at the ripe old age of 30, my wife Karen was diagnosed with breast cancer. And she lived 10 awesome years after that, passed away in 2007. And her dream was always, once we collectively beat breast cancer, we would go on a vacation each summer, and we would send someone else on a trip. And during those 10 years, it was we weren't able to do that. It was all we could do to raise 2 kids and work, etc. But when she passed away, instead of flowers at a funeral, we cobbled some dollars together and sent one lady on vacation. And then another example of just kind of the hand of God, that foundation just sprouted wings and has taken off. And what was 1 or 2 vacations a year has increased to 54 vacations this year. 10 of them were last vacations. And we've got 7 chapters now in Dayton and Columbus and Cleveland and Atlanta and San Diego, and her crazy Greek Italian aunts are starting a chapter in Chicago, so that kicks off in April as well. So I guess in short, our family picked one ministry, Vulnerable Kids, and the other one kind of picked us.
I live in Northern Kentucky, and I also have my office in Northern Kentucky. I used to work downtown, but a lot of my involvement is in Northern Kentucky. But I'm involved in Redwood School, which is a center for the disabled children and disabled adults. And I'm also involved with the St. Elizabeth Foundation, and I'm on a committee there. And having twins, I'm in the Twins Club, which is more of a social activity for me, a mommy getaway time. But I'm involved with both of those. And my children attend school at Redwood. They've integrated special needs kids with typical kids. And fortunately, my kids are now typical. They had a speech delay, but they are now typical. So it's a different type of learning environment, because you do have the special needs kids, and they're learning from the typical kids, and the typical kids are learning social interaction and more than what you could ever learn in another environment, but learning how to be nice and treat people with respect and go out in public and not have to ask, Mommy, why is that person in a wheelchair? And so I have a big heart for kids with special needs, and I've gotten involved with that school.
Well, thank you for the background. That's good. I think that was a good foundation for the next question. And the next question for all 3 of you: how have you been able to deal with life balance issues? Pressures of practice of law versus family, and then the community service activities that all 3 of you described. Mr. Dehner, if you could start.
Well, we all deal with information overload, don't we? Emails. And so always, you turn off the little thing where they pop up. You just turn it off. Don't do that. And you create what I call dikes and dams around things. And those are positive and negative. You keep toxic things out, and that includes toxic people. And you create space, like you make dates with your spouse for an evening. And if you think that way, you get control of the time. I hate it when people say I don't have time, because you have time. It's all how you allocate it. So that's one way you do it, is you create these spaces around your time. The other one comes from a brilliant guy I met. He said, we all are juggling all these balls in the air. And some of them are crystal. And a lot of them could bounce and doesn't make it. And the challenge we all have is figuring out the ones that are crystal, because those we better juggle around.
Yeah, I agree on the priorities area. I'll tell you, I just turned 50, and I am a guy who still feels like I need to go to practice after school. I was a baseball, football, basketball in high school, and played a couple sports in college as well. And to me, I need that, physical outlet each day. And when I had the kids, for the younger folks, we went from the single dog jogger to the double jog stroller, and I've always tried to do activities that have included my kids, so you can kind of kill 2 birds with one stone if you're doing something physically active. We're in year 12 now. Some of you might know about this program in Over the Rhine called Saturday Hoops. And I was a summer basketball guy who, when I wasn't working farm jobs, I worked basketball camps. And we run a basketball camp each Saturday with the spiritual component. We have a couple of speakers, a lot of lawyers involved. Dave Peck of Barron Peck and Benny runs Peck's Gym, where he brings in personal trainers, and we do circuit training. And it's a wonderful Saturday, but probably the greatest thing about it is I get to spend every Saturday morning, January through May, with my 18 and 20-year-old at UC who roll out of bed and bring other UC students down. And that started 12 years ago when we would go to Saturday Hoops together when they were in elementary school, and they've just kind of kept that rhythm going. Of course, they're both at UC, and they both have neither had any burning desire to flee the city and think this is a pretty hot town right now, so that's certainly played into it as well.
Well, I'm the only female on the panel, and as I said, I have 3-year-old twins, so I've had to juggle work and home, and actually I was with, prior to where I am now, I was with Beekner Haffer, Bob Beekner sitting in the back row there, and I had to make a really hard decision between work and home, and I chose home. So it was about 2 years ago, and I'm now at a firm very close to my house and very close to the twins' school. But sometimes you have to make hard decisions, and that was my tough decision at the time, and I'm really happy that I made that decision, because if one of my kids is sick, I'm 5 minutes from the school. I can just run and pick them up, and no questions asked. I have full flexibility now. But having to juggle the home with the work life is, for a young working mom, is not easy. And if you're looking for any secrets, I have none. I'm as crazy and overwhelmed probably as the next person. So I think that when I go to lunch with one of my girlfriends, I'm always like, how do you do it? And they're like, I don't know. And so I feel just as crazy and overwhelmed as they are. So if I have any piece of advice for anybody, it would be, you're not alone. There's other people that are in your shoes.
Now, one thing I was thinking of while the three of you were answering that question. How do you make time for you? Because I think we all know that's part of the balance of the equation too. Mr. Dehner, if you'd like to just talk.
You're making me go first every time.
Yeah, I'm just going straight down the order.
Quite all right. I'll tell you how I do it, and this is a critical part. You got to spend some of your time alone in life. So for me, I get up pretty early, and I write for 1 hour at Awakenings Coffee Shop in Hyde Park Square, and that's my alone time, basically.
What kind of stuff do you write? Just curious.
Oh, I'm on the 5th revision of my first novel. I'm a member of the Literary Club. We got another member here, and I've got a thing I got to write in 2 weeks. Better get it done, or somebody's going to get upset. So there's always something to write, but it's not legal stuff.
I know one thing I did. I don't do it as much now, but when I was a younger attorney, I would, after my 2 kids were born, once a quarter, I would just kind of set the expectations at home that I'm not going to be home for the weekend. I'm going to stay at the office late on Friday. I'm going to stay as long as I need to on Saturday, and I'm going to stay as long as I need to on Sunday. And I just found if I just once a quarter, if I just got in, that the rest of that quarter went more smoothly. When I came into work on Monday, I was just a happy person. And I set the expectations real low at home, and there were times where I'd pop in for dinner, and that was a surprise because they didn't expect to see me. Or my late wife was from Chicago originally, so she would plan trips to see relatives then. And it's always worked out great. I had a lot of billable hours during those 3 days, but I really could kind of move at my own pace, because what we tell associates now, as Joe alluded to, the snow is just always falling, isn't it? The email snow is just constant. If you want to work 4 days a week, that's great. We're certainly supportive of that at Graydon Head, but the snow still falls on that Friday you're not working. So you got to find some time where you can shovel the snow. And when you're able to get the snow shoveled and you come in on Monday morning and the driveway is clear and you got everything all nice and neat, then I think you're much better off, just from a peacefulness standpoint. And if you get done with everything by Sunday afternoon, go home and you're a hero with your wife and kids.
Well, and for me, sometimes I feel like I'm just treading to keep my head above water, having 2 little kids, but and working full time. But I honestly take, I'll plan a lunch with a friend because my kids are at school. I don't have to worry about getting a sitter, and I have a break in the middle of the day. So I'll plan a lunch with a girlfriend, for an hour, and that'll be time to myself where I can get away from work. I can, don't have to worry about motherly duties or making sure the house is clean or whatever that may be. But that's something that I've done. And I've also tried to, like the Twins Club, for instance, I go and commiserate with the other twin moms because having twins is not double the work. It's more like quadruple the work because it's, you think that it's double, but when you have one going this direction, one going that direction, you just figure out who's going to be running the slowest, and then you go after that one, and then the other one's like a mile down the road. And but it takes a village to raise these kids. So and I'm fortunate enough to have a family that that wants to help out and pitch in, and so I've just tried to get involved with different social activities and have breaks during my day to have some me time.
Would it be fair to say to all 3 of you that me time would include not just me time where you stop, just pause and try to forget about everything, clear your head? Also, would some physical activity be a component of that too?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think of that, that's essential. I mean, there are 4 things you got to have. You got to have health or fitness. You got a family of some kind, whatever it may be for anybody. You have to have some way of getting some money. Maybe $20,000 a year, maybe more. It's up to you. You got to have that, and you got to have these things, and they all have to work together. So I think of fitness as a little separate from being alone. Now, I go to the Cincinnati Sports Club, and that's fitness, but I'm with other people, bumping people. But then I go into the sauna, and then I'm alone again, just for 20 minutes. It's wonderful. It's just different from, basketball. That's all. Just a suggestion.
Yeah. I was I guess maybe in my early to mid 30s, my body was telling me that I had played enough basketball for 10 people in my lifetime. So I started running, biking, and swimming. I had done all those 3, and so I had a running group I did stuff with. I had a group I biked with every Sunday morning, which was great. And Jim, this is a big swimming town, and I ran into some swimming friends, and that was always a great way to go. I live in High Park, Mount Lookout, and I just love getting back in the trails of Alt Park, year round. Good weather or bad weather. So I think we all kind of have our outlets. And I tell you, I love running down from our office on Fountain Square into northern Kentucky and into over the Rhine. And I think there's just a lot of wonderful opportunities to see this town in a different light. Although my wife would hit me with lightning, but I'll run at night sometimes down, and I don't think there's anything more peaceful than running along the river when a big old barge is barreling through there. And the Ohio River doesn't look as good in the day as it does at night.
Well, for me, I just pack them in the stroller and go for a long walk. If my kids aren't with me, they're at school. So I used to go to the gym, and when I had the twins, all that kind of went away. But I have intentions once I get a little bit older to get back in the swing of things. But I really don't need to go to the gym right now. I chase them, so that's my exercise.
Well, on that note, one thing, obviously, since most of you see me talk about physical activity in our spring presentation, there's definitely no one right way to do physical activity. You find something that fits in with your life, and of course, being a mother of twins, I can imagine that's probably some cardio involved, among other things. But yet, different things work for different people, and you get, part of it is finding a good fit. And is it fair to say, too, that the three of you also make it a point to prioritize, make sure you eat right, sleep well, things like that? Because obviously that fits in the balancing equation, too. I know it's difficult to do with practicing law.
You try, sure.
Yeah, I try. I was a little surprised when I got asked to be on this panel, because I'm not necessarily always the picture of balance. But I think the older you get, you got to listen to your body more. And you've got to be a little smarter about what you eat. You got to find time to rest more. You get a little smarter, you get a little wiser over time as your body's not quite what it was when you were in your 20s and 30s.
I try to eat and sleep when I can. So, whenever they go to bed, I go to bed. When they wake up, I wake up. So my agenda is pretty much their agenda is pretty much my agenda.
One thing that makes me think of a cartoon I saw about a month ago where it showed a parent, finally the kids are to bed, I can have some time to myself. 2 minutes later they're asleep in the recliner.
I can relate. Totally relate.
And is it fair to say, too, that part of the keeping things in balance is also occasionally not being afraid to say no when you're asked to do things?
I think you're a litigator. Is it fair to say?
That would be correct.
Leading.
So I can't say no. Yeah, right. Of course, but I wouldn't put it negatively.
Exactly.
And I would put it as prioritizing. But do the things that make you happy at a base level, that are important to do, and the rest, the answer is no. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you start with that, it's absolutely.
Yeah. I think you need to say no sometimes, and I think we're particularly uniquely situated to do this as lawyers. Say no to some community service activities that aren't working. No one wants to sunset an organization, but we've got far too many charitable organizations in this town. We don't have too many needs. We just have too many organizations. I was on the board of the ARC Hamilton County, which was a wonderful board that helped people with mental retardation and developmental disabilities, and that ran its course, and we kind of pushed that one to an end. There was a multi-party task force that started Kids Voting of Southwest Ohio, which you had the chair of the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, and the idea was a civic lesson that culminated in the kids going to the polls with their parents, and it ran its course. It worked great, but no one wanted to say no, but the lawyers said, no, there's other stuff going on, so we sunset that. The Bar Association got a lot of money from, remember when National City Bank moved to town, and the healthcare community was up in arms about all the gunshot violence a decade ago. Things haven't changed that dramatically, but they wanted a program to reduce the gunshot violence, and it was the lawyers in town who stepped up and formed Out of the Crossfire with a grant from National City Bank, and it was a great program where we had a dedicated social worker get into the hospital rooms of these kids who had been shot to talk some sense into them. And that was one that we thought the medical community would step up and finance, and when we didn't, the lawyers said no to that one too, and we let that one sunset as well. So I think it's not just saying no to activities that we're asked to do, but sometimes just saying no to activities on the whole and trying to steer yourself and others to those community service activities that are moving the needle the most. And that's hard to do.
And not spread yourself too thin, too.
Certainly.
Well, and I think also, in addition to the activities, being able to say no at work. Sometimes, client development is huge, and we all want to say yes, yes, yes. We want to accept a new client, but do you have the time capabilities to be able to take on that new client? Do you have the skill set, and would somebody else be better off to manage that client? And are you able to finish the work in a timely manner? So I think that, although we never want to turn away a client, but, I think that, that might be something that we need to consider. Should I take on this client, or should I work an extra hour a day at work? And again, that's kind of a balance, and that's something that all of us have to decide what we want more.
Yeah, I think it's all what we're talking about is prioritizing. I mean, we all have the capability to do it. Do we have the backbone to do it? Mother Teresa had 24 hours in a day as well, and she prioritized around some pretty important topics. We don't have any fewer hours than she did, so we've got to make those things important. That's why I agree with Joe. I mean, a date night on the calendar. I mean, what's more important than spending some time with your spouse and putting it in there and putting it on the calendar and protecting it? That's so important. With Karen's Living with Breast Cancer Foundation, what that is all about is putting some fun on the calendar amidst chemotherapy and radiation and test after test and more tests, and put that on the calendar, get it there, so next time you're at chemotherapy, you're thinking about that trip to Hilton Head or to Maui or to Montana, and you have it there, and everybody in your family protects it, and everybody in your world protects it. And I think that prioritizing is something that we all have the ability to do. We may not do it great, but we've got the ability to do it.
Now, are there any other aspects of life balance that the three of you would like to share with us before we move on to our next category? Of course, you know where we're starting.
Okay. Well, we avoid toxic people, spend some time alone. The other is set achievable goals. I mean, if you're 30 pounds overweight, don't lose it this month. Just lose 3 pounds this month. Think that way, you can do it. You can do almost anything if you set achievable goals. Otherwise, you'll be constantly frustrated.
The Bar Association asked me to write an article this week or this month about work-life balance, and my first of 3 tips was to lighten up, and I think that's really true. We went through 10 years of breast cancer, and I always told people there were 2 things that got us through. One was faith, and one was a sense of humor, and I'm not sure which was more important. And, when things were just at its bleakest, one of us would say something sarcastic to each other, and just to kind of lighten the air. I'd like to say, we went to bed every night with the Bible or something more dramatic, but we went to bed every night with a 30-minute Jerry Seinfeld episode. And it just really kind of allowed us to put things in perspective. And, when she passed away, I was just an absolutely abysmal mom and dad. But the kids and I learned to kind of laugh at the incredibly stupid stuff I did. And that's helped. I think as 18 and 20-year-olds now, they are, I think they both have wonderful senses of humor. I don't think they get overly concerned about some of the little things. And I think that's just a wonderful attribute for all of us to have. You don't have to go through 10 years of cancer to have that. And I see it. We have a lot of female attorneys at Graydon. We've got a lot of younger female attorneys. I think we're going to probably be a female-run firm in a generation or so. And I see a lot of the younger women are really hard on themselves. They are trying to do it all. They're trying to be super mom, super wife, super lawyer, and they don't really cut themselves some slack, and they're very overly critical. So I think it's important upon maybe some of our older folks to point out that they're doing a wonderful job. They cannot be perfect. What I said in my article, was that I thought, parenting is God's way of turning each of our lives into a sitcom. It really is. I mean, it's crazy at times, but if you can learn to laugh at it, I think it helps a lot.
And becoming a mother was not easy for me. I had a very long, painful journey to get there. And but the one thing that it did do is, I guess lawyers are typically type A, stressed out, want to make sure everything's perfect. That kind of went to the side when I had twins, so I couldn't be everything to both of them all the time, and then they both had colic. I was blessed with 2 babies with colic, so I read something someplace, and it said something about don't get stressed out, and you ask yourself this question: is this going to matter in 5 years? And that has literally stuck in my head for the last several years. And if I start getting stressed out about something, or if I can feel myself getting anxious about something, I always ask myself, okay, Jen, is this going to matter in 5 years? And if it doesn't, then push it to the side and just laugh about it, go on. But if it does matter in 5 years, then obviously deal with it. But that has actually, that little tidbit that I read someplace has actually helped me a lot figure out, okay, prioritize what's important, and also figure out, what is worth getting stressed out about, what is not.
Okay. Now, before we open up the floor for questions, I'm going to pose one more question to the panel. If you wanted each person to leave here today with 3 main thoughts that could help them improve their life balance, what would they be?
Me again. Okay. Well, I kind of said them already. Spend time alone a little bit. It could be meditation, could be yoga, could be whatever it is. Set achievable goals and avoid toxic people. But embrace conflict and disagreement. That's why we have lawyers. But if you don't mind, let me mention something that may sound a little weird. I don't believe in prioritizing. I believe in trying to find the things that really are the most important, and the rest doesn't matter. I don't make them 3rd or 4th or 5th place. And one of the keys to what I found so satisfying and exciting about the law, I love what I do. I love every day going to work. Because work to me is not the billable hour, and it's not even the clients. It's an integrated whole of what I'm trying to do. Now, I practice international law. So I'm just going to give you one reflection. You have to be open to the mystery. It's like when Mother Teresa got, one time she said she was visited by God. She was waiting the rest of her life, never came back. But one time was enough for her. You've got to be open to that. That's one reason you must spend time alone. So I had 2 friends who lived 2 doors from each other, didn't know each other. I've been to India, where 600 million people live on $1 or $2 a day, mainly on the farms. And I had nothing to read, so I bought a book at the airport. It's one of the great books. It's called Out of Poverty, written by a psychiatrist. And he said, don't do anything unless you're going to affect the lives of 1 million people. That's what the book said. And it said he'd already helped 17 million people, and the book was about how. And I got fascinated with this. It had to do with drip irrigation, so that people on 1 cash crop a year, that's most of the poorest people in the world, can also grow peach trees or olive trees or something else for drip irrigation. It's quite interesting. And so I learned more about India. It turns out loses 40% of its food to spoilage and rot in the field because of the heat and the humidity. Well, one of my friends has invented a very interesting cold, kind of a refrigeration unit that's about this size. And the other friend is one of the top engineers in the world. He's kind of head of R&D for Siemens, although he lives here in Cincinnati. And he's an electrical engineer. And I said, why don't we create a totally solar-powered refrigeration unit for the poorest people in the world? And we have invented that, and there's a patent pending on it. We're not in it for the money. So far, we spent a good deal getting there. But there are now units operating in Zambia, Kenya, and India that don't require any electrical connection to anything, and actually allow a farmer to put the goods in the storage unit so they get to market without being spoiled. Now, that's an idea. We kind of give it away in many ways because a lot of people, and that's fine. So if at the end of all this, and I've done a lot of other stuff, if that affects the lives of 1 million people, I'm very happy. But it only came, it was not a plan. It was not a sitting down, what shall I do this week? It came from being open to the great mystery of life. And it comes to you in quiet hours in very strange ways. And as lawyers, we all need to have that. It can't be well, is this going to be a paying client, or it's what Mother Teresa experienced. And I hope, I can go into other examples like the reading camps came the same way right in this building. But that's another story.
Yeah. I'm kind of on the other spectrum. I mean, I'm kind of more of a one person at a time approach to community service. I'm probably not going to find a cure for breast cancer in my lifetime, and my wife wasn't around for that. But I can help that 32-year-old mom of 3 who's stage 4 get some fun on the calendar. I can encourage folks to donate a week a year of a vacation home, and then we can pool those resources and help a mother who's never taken her kids to the beach before it's too late. So, if you do that over time, and we're in our 9th year of doing that, you begin to move the needle significantly. And it's, one generous person getting involved. The same with vulnerable kids. I've been involved about 25 years in the inner city. I've been involved with more strategic plans than I care to. But I'm pretty confident I know where the problems are with vulnerable kids. I know where the buildings are. I know where the ladder should be set. And I'm of the view that collectively we got to start getting up those ladders one at a time. I mean, I can see that 9-year-old in Winton Terrace, and I can do something to make a difference in their life, just like I can see that 32-year-old mom of 3 who's living with breast cancer. She's probably on my mind because that mom passed away this week. And but we got that last vacation into Florida. It's bittersweet. I know that 9-year-old in Winton Terrace because I was just with him last Saturday at Saturday Hoops. And I know his story. I've never seen his mom or dad, but I know his story as well. And after 12 years of seeing those kids, you begin to move the needle a little bit. I think sometimes we wring our hands and wonder, is what I'm doing making a difference? And oftentimes it's hard to measure that. But if we address folks on a one-on-one basis, I think that's how God has created us, to have those personal relationships with folks. And that's how we move the needle, by having those one-on-one personal relationships and encouraging our friends, our colleagues, and fellow lawyers to do the same.
Well, and you had asked about 3 different...
3, or it doesn't have to be 3.
3 items, but I would say the first one would be find your purpose and your passion in life. And if you have a passion, start little. Start doing, start getting involved in the activity. Start as a volunteer, and then when you volunteer 1 hour turns into 2 hours, and maybe you don't have time to give. Time's not on my side right now. I don't have really time or money right now. But my heart is there, and I do give my time that I can. I give money if I can, and word of mouth, and the next thing would be I had this article that when they asked me to be a speaker, I read this article. It was back in the fall, but it says, want to accomplish more, stop working. But it literally says we are of a society that we are constantly moving all the time. We are constantly thinking. We don't turn our brains off. At least I don't. I go to bed and it's this all the time. What do I need to do for that client? Well, I need to send that email, or but you have to learn to shut it off at some point. You have to be able to sleep and get some rest, and be able to turn off your mind. And I've learned read about all this mindfulness. This is like the new thing now, is being mindful, and the yoga and everything. And I think that there's a lot to that, because you have these thoughts, and then you can send them away and turn off your brain and get some sleep. But I would say find your passion and your purpose in life, and start small. And then the next thing would be turn it off. I struggle with that big time, but I'm kettle calling black right now. But but turning it off and learning to push all the worry to the side and have some alone time, as Joe said.
I think you're absolutely right, because I think we're all guilty of having trouble shutting it off. Like, how many people here get that wonderful brainstorm about a case we're working on at 10:30 at night? Well, one little trick I learned, it's actually going to be my next my article in the CBA report next month, is I actually keep a notepad by my bed. So if I have that brilliant brainstorm at 10:30 at night, I just write it down and forget about it, instead of spending all night thinking, oh, geez, I better remember this, I better remember this, oh, crap, I didn't get sleep, and then next morning I forgot half of it.
You don't mind. My wife used to do that, and I said, would you please move it over to the chest of drawers? Now, why did I do that? That's because if it's that important, she will get out of bed, walk over, and write it down. But it's amazing how many of those thoughts aren't that important.
Oh, I have that. I have mine at the foot. I have mine at the foot of the bed, so I have to sit up. And similar, I don't have to. It's
kind of critical.
Well, it's kind of like how you don't want to have your alarm clock right next to your bed, because your reflex action when it goes off. Okay, I'm back asleep. Okay, now that we've gone through most of the questions, does any? And then we'll open up the floor to questions for the panel.
I'm going to have you use the microphone.
Thank you, panel. This has been excellent. And I was reminded of really the best volunteer family activity I ever had when I heard Jennifer in Kent talk about using family time to volunteer and how that worked together. And Joe, I want to make this a question to you because of what they suggested. But what I did with my family when my youngest was in third grade, by the way, his birthday is today, he's 26, so that'll give you an idea of how long ago this was. We had a program at Vine Street Elementary with a wonderful teacher whose name was Lisa Campbell. And she brought in donuts and cereal and milk at 7 a.m. in the morning when the Beekner family showed up. We had books and breakfast with the Beekners. And all of us took a child and helped them learn to read, including my third grader, who the night before we would do this would get so excited sometimes he couldn't fall asleep. This is a wonderful experience for him to be working with another child who might be in first grade or ever, teaching him how to read and helping him with words. I just think, wow. What the two of you mentioned to me made a light bulb go off, because if there's an opportunity for us to add balance to our lives, and connect passion and purpose to be helping others, Joe, tell us about the summer reading camps and where you have room for us to volunteer, especially if we can bring our children.
Yeah, if you don't mind, Bob. That whole thing started in this building. There's a little art gallery down on the second floor, at least there was a few years ago. My wife noticed in color in the Enquirer in February, horrible time of year here, this art that we never go downtown at night. That's how we get out of there. So we came here, and it turned out the artist was there with her rector at the former church, in the Episcopal Church in Northside. And that led to our daughter volunteering at the Boys and Girls Club, and then my wife mentoring there, Bob. And she said, would you help this kid with his math? 9-year-old kid. And he was good at math, but he couldn't read. That's how this all started. This has resulted in, one of my daughters, we have twins by the way, is a kindergarten teacher, the other is going to be an English teacher. And that had a lot to do with why they're doing this. And last summer we had 12 sites helping 120 kids. And we go to the public schools and we ask for your worst readers. We want the kids who cannot read a stop sign. And at ages 9 and 10, there are kids in this town who cannot read a stop sign. And it's because they don't have parents like you and us. And so we've created these reading camps. 7 of them are at libraries, 3 of them are at churches. One's going to be at the Hyde Park sponsored church and over the Rhine I was talking to Ken about. And the idea is they have 6 weeks where for the first time in their life they have somebody every single day, a professional reading tutor, sitting down with them one-on-one, as Ken's talking about, every single day for 30 days, who's a reading specialist. At the end of which I don't know what you know about, but dibbles is kind of how you measure this stuff. It's on average 30% dibbles increase versus an average 10% fall off. That's more than a kid learns in a year at a public school. And this is a 6-week program we're doing. And the key to this, to carry it on, is to involve volunteers afterwards throughout the school year. And you can do that. You don't have to necessarily go into the school. You could go to the library branch at night. That's now underway. Or on a Saturday. This is what we have to do. I mean, we have chronic child poverty and inequality in this country. And in my view, the single leading cause of this, you can argue about this, is summer learning loss. Because we'll take our kids and we'll take them to Europe, or we'll get a tutor for it. We'll do whatever it takes. But there are half the kids in this city, maybe more, that don't have that. And that's why we're doing this. I hope that answers your question, Bob. This is a passion.
Well, it's an important one. I mean, it's fundamental. I think reading tutoring is particularly impactful because you do have that one-on-one experience. Most of my mentoring relationships over the last few decades have started very formally in the school setting, where you put the emphasis on reading. But if you take a 30-minute session with one of these kids, you can really break it down effectively. I would spend the first 5 minutes just kind of talking about what's going on in their lives. And then I would spend 20 minutes reading with them, hearing me read, and then they read, just the same way I did with my own kids. And then the most important 5 minutes, I would just spend the last 5 minutes just telling that kid how great he is. Just every week. Every week when Kent walks through the door, we're going to read together, he's going to take an interest in me, and he's just going to fill me up with how great I am. And that's what we do at Saturday Hoops. We call it our 8 minutes. So we have 8 minutes a week. Even if you can just come to Saturday Hoops for 8 minutes at the Over the Rhine Center each Saturday, we tell our volunteers to pull a kid aside and for 2 minutes just pour into them about how great they are. On Saturday mornings, all of our kids are good readers. You can see it in their eyes. All of our kids are leaders. You can tell they're leaders in the classroom. All of our kids have the potential to be the next LeBron James. You can see it right in them. And if we tell them that week after week after week, even if it's just in 2-minute increments, after a while, they begin to believe you. And once they start to believe you, then it's a whole different ballgame. Then you've got momentum. Then you hit the tipping point. And that's why I believe so much in these one-on-one programs like Joe's talking about.
Any other questions? Just a minute, wait till the microphone, please.
What kind of support systems do you have, and how much vacation do you all take?
I'm not sure I heard the question.
Support system.
What are your support systems and how much vacation do you take?
Well, actually, I don't have any family that lives here in Cincinnati. I'm originally from Maysville, and my parents come up and help when they can, and but we have great friends, and I have a good base of babysitters and stuff, but my husband and I have tried to make sure that we have date nights and all that kind of stuff. And as far as vacation, I just got back from Florida, so I try to take, I'm now trying to take 2 one-week vacations, one in the winter and then one in the summer. So that's my time away.
Well, my support system, we don't have any family in town. My parents live about 4 hours away. But, I thank God that we fought breast cancer for 10 years in this town. I mean, what an awesome community. I mean, my wife was not from here either. We have just a wonderful group of friends. The folks at Graydon where I work were wonderfully supportive. And again, I think it's a reflection as to why my kids are still here. I mean, it is a unique community. I know we have a lot of people in this town who kind of were born and raised here and still go to the same parish. I have a little more objectivity. I'm from, we moved 6 or 7 times, and I can't think of a better place than Cincinnati to go through adversity. I can't think of a better place to get involved in community service activities with our friends.
The thing I'd say, we've abolished the word vacation. Seriously. I mean, my wife and I maybe have taken 1 week a year for the last 20 years, but it doesn't matter because we'll take a Friday and do something with a reading camp, or we'll do something else. And it's the support system becomes all these people you meet when you figure out what's important in life, and it may be a board, it may be a one-on-one, it may be whatever it is, and the support system just emerges from that. That's really what happens. And so our vacation is almost all the time. And we have tennis friends, and that's created a circle of support. We have the literary club, and I mean, just a wonderful thing. And and you don't think of them as vacation. They're better than vacation.
I think that's a great point. It's funny, I was with my girlfriend last night, and it's February, it's dark and gloomy, and this is the time of the year where you're starting to think about spring break and those kinds of things. But I don't know what it's been, as I've gotten more passionate and jazzed up about these things, I feel like I have less of a need for vacations. I don't think I'm ever as happy. I'm not going to be happier on a beach than I am on Saturday mornings and over the Rhine. I mean, it is just exactly where I should be. I feel confident it's exactly where God wants me to be. And the days I had to miss, I hate it. I'm in Leadership Cincinnati now, and I had to miss a Saturday recently. It tore me apart as I was getting text pictures. And I think that's huge. And I think that's the passion we're all looking for. And as I said, I went through 5 or 6 boards before I found these 2 that are great. And I will still take vacations this year, but I don't have the need that I once did.
We're actually just one more question.
It's not a question, it's just a kind of a comment to expound upon the dams and dikes that you mentioned. First of all, thank you to the 3 of you for taking the time today. In my opinion, this is our best friend and our worst enemy. If you take an opportunity, this is something I did a few years ago, and I turned off the push notifications feature for emails. And I'm telling you, it changed my life. If you just try it for a few days, try it for a week, I near guarantee you that you'll never turn it back on again. And it's just taking that extra step to have to push that button to have the emails come to you means that you're actually turning yourself back on for work as opposed to work constantly turning you back on again and again and again. It's kept my phone from going off on my nightstand at 2:30 in the morning, much to my wife's dismay. So it's just a suggestion. So again, thank you to the 3 of you for your time.
I actually agree with you completely, Nick. I actually don't have that. I don't have that even turned on my phone. So email's the only way I can look at them is if I log into my email account. Well, we've just reached the time. Everybody, thank you for our 3 panelists. And if anybody has any more questions for them, we'll all be here for a while. Please fill out your evaluation forms. Thank you for coming.